places on Raquette Lake. Well, Collis Huntington, he didn't grow up rich. His justification: in 1 hour, the traveler can go from Clearwater to Raquette Station. Under the present option, I think I mentioned this to you, the traveler and baggage, often separated, takes a 2-mile railroad to the steamer dock. Then after multiple stages and steamers across the Fulton Chain Lakes and their carries, reaches Raquette Lake in 5 hours. That's why it's a good idea. It's a better idea than what Old Forge had. In Old Forge, here's the 2-mile, it's the railroad from Vendera to the dock. They get on steamers. Rich people with their private cars had to leave them there in Old Forge. That's the Forge House. Okay, Forge Motel is right here right now. Then they took the steamer. Look at the Forge House overlooking Old Forge Pond. There's the 2-mile railroad from Vendera. All right, here's Fred Kirsch's. Letty's dad had a steamship line. Fred Kirsch. Now, this is 5 hours. 7:30. I'll make that bigger, folks. All right, 5 hours. That's not inlet here. That's Brown's Track Inlet. All right, so and hopefully your luggage is following you. And this is what that looks like. This is the head of 7th Lake. Here's maybe a steamer, John G. Mosier. Here's people here. Is that for me or whatever? And the people going north. They're going to get off of here and take a stage to get to the foot of 8th Lake. And then they got another lake and steamer to go after that. But that's what it was like in those days. That Hollington said it is a better idea. Hey, I'm getting to the railroad. Okay? Any questions so far? We want to get to the railroad, okay. All right, here's the railroad schedule, June 30th. And you don't think there's typos nowadays? Christ could have used that, okay. All right. These dots here, these asterisks are flag stations. That means that railroad's going to stop if you're waving a flag or a lantern, okay? The 3 main stations were Clearwater, Eagle Bay, and Raquette Lake. And here's the stop at Uncas Road. And in case anybody was asking me, what engines did he have, Charlie? Okay. In the beginning, they had a 460 engine here that started early on, and over here a 460 engine here. I'm sorry, yeah, 460 engine. For non-railroad buffs, all that means is 460 means 4 leading wheels, 6 wheels that actually move the thing, and 0 trailing wheels. That's all that means, and that's enough I'm going to say about that. Okay? All right, so the railroad's going to go here, going to go west to east to, here's Lake Rondax, over here, I'm sorry. It's going to go here. It's going down here. Now you go to Lake Rondax today, follow Carter Road, not Independence Road, Carter Road. That'll take you to milepost 64 where the railroad line was, okay? The railroad then does this jiggy jog underneath South Lake Rondax. Then it goes south, does jiggy jog here to go around mountains. I'm going to tell you about the siding and all that. So it goes on these Bald Mountain Station. It's later called Minnowbrook, because they told the railroad, why are you calling it Bald Mountain? That's way down there. Camp Minnowbrook is right there. Fairview, Skensawanee, Eagle Bay, Uncas Road, and it goes right here to Raquette Lake, okay? I'm sorry, not far enough, right here. The Suckerbrook Bay Road, that's today's Uncas Road, that started Eagle Bay. The Suckerbrook Bay Road went between Brown's Track Ponds and went up to Suckerbrook Bay here, all right? It wasn't until later on when cars happened that they straightened the road here and had to go right to Raquette Lake. All right, that's the whole line. All right, here's the junction at Carter Station. Back then it was called Clearwater. All right? It's sort of a Y because it is. And the railroad from Raquette Lake would come this way, go north, back down, and go back up again to get back on the line. Can everybody see that? Is that, I don't know if things visible. There's the station, all right? Here's Clearwater Station at milepost 64 on the Raquette Lake Railroad. It was named, by the way, a month after the Raquette Lake Railroad opened, Collis Huntington died at Pine Knot. So there's all the work pushing to get it done. Well, he did get the western portion of the Transcontinental Railroad done, so that was a big highlight too. But I read where he all business stopped in his offices when any matters concerning the Raquette Lake Railroad happened, because this was his deal, his hobby.
Is there another name for Clearwater now? I mean,
3 seconds.
Pardon?
3 seconds.
Oh, okay.
As Harry suggested. This is renamed Carter. Here's the Carter name right here. It was named in 1916 after a guy named H.D. Carter, who was a general manager on the New York Central line, for a long number of years, and he had passed away recently. So that's why we know it as Carter Station. We don't really know whose laundry that is, but I'm going to move on. Now, here is a map showing you where Rondex Station is going to be. Here's a picture of that. It's a flag station. I'm sure they can see the people without the flag. So now, from Rondex Station, if they have a heavy load, the next station down is Summit Station, which is right around Cary Pond. And they have what's called a siding there. So if it's a heavy load of cars, or multiple cars, they'll leave the first half of cars here and go back to Lake Rondex Station. And then connect them, go down to Bald Mountain Station there. Now, everybody's probably wondering when they drive the road between Old Forge and Eagle Bay, why are they calling that train wreck point? All right, thank you for asking the question. Okay. So there's a train wreck. Now, you might say, why weren't they watching the rails? Well, they do. They had walkers going from Carter Station to Raquette Lake Station and meet at Eagle Bay Station to let people know if there was a hindrance. But if you read the weather reports back then, there were tremendous storms across the Great Lakes that entered the North Country overnight. And this was a work train after the storm passed through and the log was on the tracks. One person died. I got this picture and a few others from Benjamin Hall. His grandfather is the one person that died. I'm sorry, 3 people died. His grandfather was one of them. A conductor went down to Camp Littlebrook and told the Burnett family, we need some help, there's a train wreck. November 9th, 1913. Here's another picture. It happened in November, so it's not like vacation time, but still. And it's an empty work train, like maybe to pick up supplies at Raquette Lake or whatever. Here's another one. Raquette Lake, RR. All right, this is Middlebrook Station, 5.5 miles from Milepost 64, another flag station. Now, this is another reason why Old Forge Company is really ticked off at this Raquette Lake Railroad opening. Why would anybody take their steamboats to inland if they could just sit on their train and get off at the stations along Fourth Lake? Middlebrook Station was the first spot. You know that these stations, where these stations were, those are the blue lines you see along Route 28, okay? And those who weren't familiar, that hiking path, that was the bed of the Raquette Lake Railroad, okay? Now, this is Route 28. You might say, where is that, Charlie? Charlie almost got killed taking this next picture. It's right, Lake Marwood Camp, M-A-R-W-O-D, is right over here. I know the state's done some work and all that stuff, and so I couldn't get the dip in the road from the postcard, but you recognize this mountain line every time you go north to Eagle Bay. Or is that
St.
east?
Peter's Hill right there.
Right, right. Thank you. Next station is Skensawanee. That's where Camp Mohawk was. And they would have a lantern, especially if it was a night run. You don't see that word too much, only on state maps and all that, because it's obviously a Native American road name, made up or not. I know George Longstaff, I think, has something in his book about that. He wrote a book called Heydays to Maydays, which is really good history of his camps. Here's Fourth Lake. Here's the view from Eagle Bay Station. This is the station. This is the back of the line here. Eagle Bay Road is sort of here. I'm going to show you a better view in a second. This is the Eagle Bay House, Eagle Bay Hotel, that burned in 1942. Here's the front of the station. And it's in the same spot. This pot, I forgot whether it was just raised, but it's in the same spot. It wasn't on the other side of the road. This gives you a map, sort of. Make it bigger, Charlie. Okay. Here's the hotel. Where's the station? I'm going to make it smaller. Here's the depot. I'm sorry, I went right on by it. Okay. Here's the roads, and here's to Uncas. When this map was made, it was to Uncas. It wasn't called Uncas Road yet. It was still called Suckerbrook Railroad, or the Eagle Bay to Suckerbrook Bay. All right, that view today is like right here. Here's the station. Here's where Eagle Bay Hotel was, I believe. Do the Shopfers still own the Eagle Bay Villas? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, but this I tried to get a parallel view, and the rail line would go up this way. This is what they've done a lot of work. They're trying to make apartments out of the station after it was kind of derelict for many years. I think I took this 2 years ago, and they had the station sign up that we saw so many years. All right. Now this is the Tin Lizzie. I guess that's the car. And where I couldn't. This is probably heading toward Eagle Bay, because that's where you see level land mostly. When you got out of the dirt area and the beginning of paved. I don't think you see level land like this when you're going toward Raquette Lake, do you? Well, it's got to be going to Eagle Bay. The track's on this side. Sorry about that. It's got to be. All right. Where the reason there's a station here, or Uncas Road, is because poor old J.P. Morgan had to ride his wagon on his Uncas Road, or Mohegan Road. He had to keep on going through 7th Lake, 8th Lake campground, and somewhere up here go up toward Cascade Lake. His choice at this point is to get a steamer or keep on riding your wagon up to Big Moose Station. Right? So it was nice having a Uncas Road station, because he could get off there and take the Raquette Lake Railroad to Webb's line at Big Moose Station. There's one thing I wanted to mention too, that a year after the Raquette Lake Railroad opened, Webb's people bought all their steamboats down there in Old Forge and gave them Indian names, like Mohegan, Uncas, Naasani, and they engineered a mailboat to happen that they called the Old Forge. That was the first official post office boat, and they bought the 2-mile railroad from Thundera to the dock. All right? When cars happened, all that stuff went away. All right, here is Uncas Station. 1904, it doesn't look brand new, but anyway. These are hides here.
Oh, dear.
Okay. All right, I won't look at them.
Some trunks.
I know, sorry kids. Okay. Suckerbrook Bay Road. What that did was, after leaving Eagle Bay, it didn't go to Raquette Lake because the whole idea was Long Lake and the town of Indian Lake and Long Lake built the road to Eagle Bay. So they had to start at Suckerbrook Bay Road. Suckerbrook Bay. Go between Brown Shack Ponds. And the reason for that, what happens when you go to Long Lake, and instead of turning right to go to Long Lake Village, you go left to look at Buttermilk Falls, you ride down that road, you're going past Forked Lake. That's because the people from Long Lake are going to go to Forked Lake and get a steamer or ferry across Suckerbrook Bay to pick up this road. The Raquette Lake Railroad, though, they weren't going there. They weren't going to go to Indian Point either, like Webb was originally thinking. They're going to go to Raquette Lake Village. And somebody's going to say, Charlie, they got a loop there. And I've seen that loop in that diorama at the Adirondack Museum, haven't you? There is a loop. It wasn't just to get the little mechanical train back and forth. There was a loop. Now, this is Uncas Road, okay? For those without opera glasses. Okay? This is only one of the Brown Shack Ponds. So this is what you take leaving Raquette Lake. Go up the hill past the Antlers Road and you pick it up here. The middle route is the Dillon Road, but also that's the route of the Raquette Lake Railroad. Okay? I'll make that smaller to get a better idea. Okay? This happens to be Route 28. All right, this is from William Gove's book. I got that other map about Lake Rondex from there. Here you have the railroad comes in the town here. I'll make it a little bigger. All right, there's engine house, section parking, agent's house, ice house, private car shed, oil, coal, Raquette Lake Hotel, the general store. Okay, train goes around the station, around the town here. There's a schoolhouse. Comes back onto the main line, but no, it comes back in to let the people off and get ready for the next trip. And that's why they got a loop here and also at the diorama. Let's see. I haven't read half of this stuff. Russ Bird said in his book that there was a light rail system. He didn't call it that, but he was an engineer on the railroad, and he knew the other engineers. And sometimes there'd be a mason meeting in Old Forge. Well, you get a train, nothing was scheduled, to take him to Carter Station. Oh, no, they stop at Eagle Bay first, pick up some Mason members, take it the rest of the way to Carter Station, then go down to the Thundera Station, pick up some more members, and take the 2-mile ride into town, and that's where they had the meeting. And he would say something you couldn't get Mason. Now, any Masons in here? I'm not talking about you Masons when he says this. He says back then you couldn't get Masons to walk 100 feet for a meeting. I thought that was cute. From 1906 to 1922, the railway transported ice from Raquette Lake to the Manhattan Market, to New York Central to the Manhattan Market. Let's look at the stations here. This is that same loop today. All right, and this is where the railroad came in. This is probably the loop, because this is where the railroad came in, Dillon Road. The library is like right here. And this is a sign they put up a couple years ago. Thanks Donna Poole for the picture. This is where the railroad came into Raquette Lake Village. And this is the station. 17.89 miles from Carter Station. During its run from 1900 to 1933, there were a couple fires, one of them huge. One of them burned 3 steamboats, burned the Raquette Lake House Hotel, burned the general store. So that's a different one that you see today at Raquette Lake. A lot of people kept homeless. They had to get a telegraph to Utica that telegraphed Old Forge, that telegraphed Inlet's Fire Department. And this is 1927, that one-year-old station, one-year-old engine, they had a devil of a time getting it up to help put out the fires here, to keep it from getting to the station. If you if you get Letty's book, Memories of Inlet, Armstrong talks about the fire department, but if you went to our program in the fire department, we read the story that Louis Armstrong wrote about how they got through snow to that fire.
Charlie, up on the wall up here on the right, that's that engine right there.
And that's in front of our post office building, which back then, underneath was the first firehouse here. Thanks, Corey. During the summer, they ran 2 trains daily, and in the winter, they operated 1 day train, 3 days a week. When the automobile happened, people didn't have much need for the railroad anymore. I have a few more pictures here. There's the Raquette Lake Hotel. When I was researching the railroad and the roads, the manager of the hotel in 1914 had a car shipped to him, an automobile in 1914. And he wanted to drive it to Eagle Bay. So he had people bulldoze a route from where the hotel was. I don't think it's that road we take today, but to where the Suckerbrook Bay Road went north to Suckerbrook Bay. And people started driving that road, became a sort of an improved road. And then also during the period of time, during the World War, the transportation company at Raquette Lake operated ferries to Forked Lake Cary, car ferries. And believe me, this is true. Their ads said no torpedoes, no sharks, because of the submarines in the Atlantic and all that. But once better roads happened, that sort of went away too. The last season was 1933, the last run on September 30th. Early in summer of 1934, a special work train arrived at the station, starting where the tracks reached Carlin's, started pulling all the rails up. There's something else I've forgotten here. It's the station. It was run by Mr. Pulling for several years. It burned in 1972. You can see that it's part of the tracks going around the village right here. All right. This is one set of tracks. That's the supply store that burned. This is the private boat house. Now, the American Legion had an event in 1960. This is the station right there. And these people all came up from Inlet. And that's where the train station was.
Yeah.
There's one of those signs. Now, there were several Killaquahs, but at the time that the railroad ran, this is where people would get off of the train, take the boat, and the Kiloquat took them to the Marion River Carry. There's a short railroad there, if people are familiar with that. That's how they would get to Blue Mountain Lake. We had a restaurant in town called Trottier's, and the husband of the marriage that owned it, Fred, he died. His wife sold it to a couple, Bert Gardner and his wife, and they ran it for 2 or 3 years, but they came back to Raquette Lake and they ran the Raquette Lake Station restaurant for a few years. The official dissolution of the corporation was in 1938, like all corporations had to be dissolved. I think that's my last slide. Thanks. Any questions, anybody? I see the wheels turning.
Yeah. What, and this may have an obvious answer, sorry. What fraction of the development of Eagle Bay happened
Because
I
of the
presume the hotel was the seed crystal for it, kind of, but what fraction of the development happened once the railroad came there? And then,
Okay.
What fraction of it came, once the road came through?
I don't know about the fractions, but
Okay.
to tell you the truth, before Webb's Railroad, before the Raquette Lake Railroad, if you look at a map of Fourth Lake and Third Lake, the map, if they're really good maps, they have dots where camps were. These weren't what we call camps today. These are hunting camps and all that. And when access to the region happened, before Webb's Railroad, the people could afford to do vacations were wealthy people. You could afford to have somebody else watch their place while they vacated. That's where it comes from. And when Webb's Railroad happened, all people of all classes could come to the mountains. You had Rocky Point House, 1893. Right close to the Eagle Bay Station, Webb's people sold Dwight Sperry land to build the Eagle Bay House, and an area for people and a dock and all that. Other hotels happened. Hess Camp, 1898. They had Camp Neodeck. All these hotels were happening, and what happened was that brought people to Old Forge to live. It also brought development to Inlet to live. So that's what the access does. I mean, that's why you see all these shopping centers and stuff on interstate exits. That's why you see all these apartment hotels and stuff along the exits. You build access to a region, it's going to grow. And that's what took forever for the state to be able to do until people could get in the region. You had 4 places in Inlet, 2 or 3 places in Inlet in 1901. You had the church, you had the Parquet, you had the Arrowhead, you had Hess Camp. Things started happening after that. You had Inlet Inn on the channel.
Between the chicken and the egg, the station caused the development, rather than the station went where there was already.
No, the station just needed a stopping point, because there's only 3 stations on the line. It was the railroad access. That's why it had all those stops along Fourth Lake. Because even if you weren't going to that hotel, you were going to go to your camp. It also gave visitors a place to travel to get to your hotels. So, yes, sir.
I didn't hear the answer to what Clearwater was named now.
Okay, it's Carter Station. All right, it was named after him because he was the general manager of the New York Central for many years, and they considered it did a lot of great service, and so they decided to name that station after him. Well, there's another good reason to change the name from Clearwater, because everybody was joking. There was a sign near the station saying, "Don't drink the water." You had another question, sir?
Yeah, I had a question regarding the Minnowbrook Station. When we were kids, we, of course, ventured there. And I remember in the woods there was the foundation of the station, but I believe there was another building. Would you happen to know if there was a schoolhouse there? That's
I
what
think
my
there
memory
was. If you look at, there's a book called Heartwood
Also,
that Bill Burnett, is that his name? Bill Burnett, he was a mailboat captain for many years.
Burnett.
Burnett, thank you, Burnett. And very good book. There's stuff in there that's not in other books. He tells you like it was. And he talks about, I think he's got a picture of the schoolhouse in it. He's got a nice index, which is what I love about books. Okay, thank you.
Charlie, did the Raquette Lake Railroad connect with the New York Central at some point to go to New York?
Big Moose Station.
Or Big Moose Station?
I'm sorry, Carter Station.
Carter Station.
The Big Moose Station didn't have a branch off it,
Okay.
unless there were lumber railroads. But you know, that's how it connected. He also connected with New York Central if you went down to Old Forge and picked up the railroad at Fulton Chain Station or at Thundera.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Were these railroads principally for use of wealthy camp owners, Huntington, Webb, Morgan, or do they also have a role in the logging industry or the ice industry?
Well, the Raquette Lake Railroad started as a logging railroad. When it was built, it was for John Dix to get his lumber out of the woods in Township 8. It started that way. William Scott the camp around that station he got with the land, he built mills up there, Mullen Mill, I think there's a Lotus siding and all that was there. It was because Huntington had to use the same trip that you and I took and all the lakes. This is a better way to get to Raquette Lake. 1 hour. And yeah, he got to Pine Knot and Morgan got to Camp Uncas and later Vanderbilt to Sagamore. But it was a better way. And that's what industrialists do. They find better ways. They make money, but this is a better way.
How are they making money if they weren't just on tourist industry or, you know?
Transportation.
I mean,
Actually,
they
the railroad didn't make money.
They didn't need to make money, obviously.
They didn't need to, and the railroad didn't make money.
They didn't make money.
And it wasn't until the car happened that they went away.
So it was not an entrepreneurial investment, it was a personal investment.
It was a better idea. Who knows how populated Raquette Lake and Inlet would have been, but it also brought supplies and food to those areas. How did they get food there now? I mean, then before the railroad.
I can envision Webb sitting over at Shelburne Farm looking at the sunset over the Adirondacks and said, I need to go over there, and I need a way to get there.
That's why he built his camp.
That's why I built a camp, yeah.
And that's, you know, he built a 100-some-mile railroad to the Adirondacks in 18 months.
Yeah.
He should get a medal at least for that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the construction of the railroad. Who are the workforce? Are the local people? They bring people in?
No.